Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Math with Mullins. Today, excuse me, we're going to look at 8.7 composite figures. So we're about to find the volume of composite figures and figure out what they are. We need to make sure we review all the volume of our 3D shapes we've talked about so far. So this is the list that we've talked about so far using the reference sheets that are given to us. We have our rectangular prism, which is area the base times height, or just length times width times height. Cylinders are pi r squared times h. Spheres are 4/3 pi r cubed. Triangular prisms are volume is area of the base times height, or 1/2 times the length, width, and height. Your cone is 1/3 pi r squared times h. And then your hemisphere, which is half of a sphere, you still do your 4/3 pi r cubed, but then divide that answer by 2. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do some practice questions. So all these shapes that we see today, we are going to be able to know how to find the volume already, except we now have 2 or more shapes put together. Okay? I'm going to start off with these. It says to find the volume of a composite figure, find the individual pieces and either add or subtract them to get the final answer. Notice that we are finding a cone within a prism, so we're going to have to subtract. I'm going to just write sub here to find our volume because it's almost like the cone is taking out of the prism. I'm going to start with my prism first because that one's pretty easy. You're just doing the prism, which is a cube, so that's length, 6, and height are all 6. So 6 to the 3rd power is going to be 216 cubic centimeters. So I'm going to write that here on my list. Okay, the next is my cone. Remember, for a cone, you have to find the volume by doing 1/3 pi radius squared times the height. So we need to make sure that we find the radius first. This diameter is given to us, so 4 is not the radius, instead 2 is, and the height is still 6, the height of the prism. So I'm going to type into my calculator pi times 2 times 2, that's my radius squared, times my height, which is 6. And then because it's a cone, I got to make sure I divide by 3. So 3.14 times 4 times 6 is 75.36. Divide by 3. I'm getting my cone as 25.12. So 25.12 cubic centimeters. Now I just need to subtract these two to find the leftover volume. So I'm going to subtract that from 216, and I'm going to end with 190.88 cubic centimeters. Okay? See if you can try this one on your own. So go ahead and pause the video here. Try to find the volume of your triangular prism, rectangular prism, and then the total. This one, because they're on top of one another, they're both taking up space, we're going to add together. All right, hopefully by now you've gotten a chance to try it. Let's start with this triangular prism first. Thinking about this triangular prism, in the front I have my 2 numbers that are touching the right angle, a 12 and a 9. So we'll call this triangular prism, okay? And then the height that goes from triangle to triangle is this number right here, which is 4. And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So 12 times 9 times 4 is 432, divided by 2 is 216 cubic inches, so triangular prism, 216, okay? Rectangular prism, I'm just going to find length times width times height, so that's 16 times 4 times 6. No dividing, no fancy stuff, so 16 times 4 times 6 gives me 384 cubic inches. So I'm going to add that to my list right here. And then because these are stacked on top of one another, they're both taking up space outside of one another. We're going to add 384 plus 216, and we're ending up with 600 even. Okay? Next up, we have a hemisphere and our cone. And again, these are both stacked on top of one another, so we'll be adding to find our volume. Let's go ahead and pause the video here, try this one on your own, and when you're ready to check it, click play. All right, your hemisphere, remember, is your sphere's formula, so 4/3 pi r cubed, but then because it's a hemisphere, you need to make sure you're dividing by 2 at the end, okay? For your hemisphere, you just need your radius, and that's exactly what we're given here. Remember, we talked about doing this before, 4 times pi times r cubed. So 10 times 10 times 10, dividing by 3. Then once we get that answer, we'll divide by 2. So 4 times pi times 10 to the third, which would be 1,000, gives me 12,560, divided by 3 gives me 4,186.6 repeating, but then I'm going to divide that by 2, and I'm going to get 2,093.3. So hemisphere is 2,093.3 cubic yards. Now let's talk about my cone. Your cone is 1/3 pi r squared times the height. My radius is already given. My height is 15, so let's go ahead and start it. 3.14 times 10 times 10 times 15, but then remember to divide by 3 at the end for that 1/3. So pi times 100 times 15, and then dividing by 3, I'm getting 1,570 cubic yards. So because these are both taking up space, I'm going to add them together. So 1,570 plus that 2,093.3, and I'm getting 3,663.3 cubic yards. Okay? We got one more to try. This one, we have a half cylinder and a prism, and then we want to find the volume. Okay? So half cylinder, let's start with our volume formula, 1/3 pi r squared times h, but then when we're done, we need to divide everything by 2 since it's half. Prism's pretty easy. Let's go and do my prism first. That's length times width times height. So prism. Notice that these tick marks are here, so that means all these sides are 6s. So this is length, width, and then height is 10. So 6 by 6 by 10. Okay? I know 6 times 6 is 36, and then times 10 will just give me 360. So prism is 360 cubic meters. Now let's go back to our volume of our half cylinder. I need my radius, and right now this diameter is all that I'm given. So if diameter is 6, radius will be 3, and my height is 10. So we're going to do pi times 3 times 3 times the height, which is 10, divide by 3, then divide by 2, since it is a half cylinder. So 3.14 times 9 times 10 divided by 3 gives us 94.2. And then I'm going to divide that by 2 since it's half, and I get 47.1 cubic meters. I'm just going to double check my work here, make sure I didn't miss out on anything. Okay, since both of these are taking up space, they're outside of one another, we will add to find our volume. So 47.1 plus 360 gives us a grand total of 407.1 cubic meters. Okay, that is all we had today for composite figures. We're going to do a little bit more tomorrow, just more review, and make sure that we feel comfortable with it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope this video helped you. If it did, give it a thumbs up, and we will catch you next time. Have a great day.